The casino lights blurred into streaks of gold as Victoria Sterling collapsed against the marble floor, her champagne glass shattering into 1,000 pieces. Blood trickled from her temple. Standing over her, trembling with rage, was the one person she'd trusted with everything, her twin sister, Olivia. "You stole my life," Olivia whispered, her voice cracking. "And now I'm taking it back." Security cameras blinked red in the corner. $50 million sat in a briefcase between them. One sister would walk out a billionaire. The other might not walk out at all. But how did two women who shared the same face, the same DNA, end up here? To understand that, we need to go back 3 months, to where this nightmare truly began. Victoria and Olivia Sterling weren't just rich. They were generationally wealthy. Their grandfather had built Sterling Industries from nothing, turning it into a tech empire worth $20 billion. The twins had grown up in matching bedrooms in a mansion that covered 3 acres, went to the best schools, drove cars most people only saw in movies. They had everything except the one thing money couldn't buy: their parents' attention. Their mother died when they were 8. Their father buried himself in work, leaving them to be raised by nannies and tutors. Despite this, the twins were inseparable. Victoria was bold and fearless, always jumping first and asking questions later. Olivia was thoughtful and kind, the one who remembered birthdays and checked on the staff when they were sick. They balanced each other perfectly. When kids at school tried to bully the quiet girl in their class, Victoria stood up for her while Olivia befriended her. When their father forgot Christmas one year, too busy with a business deal in Tokyo, they decorated the entire mansion themselves and invited all the staff's families for dinner. They shared secrets, dreams, and an unbreakable bond. At least, that's what everyone thought. Everything changed the day their father called them into his office. He was 70 now, his hair completely white, his hands shaking slightly as he held a folder. "Girls, I'm retiring," he announced, his voice tired. "One of you will take over Sterling Industries. I've decided to split my fortune, but the company can only have one leader." He looked between them. "You have 6 months to prove yourselves. Whoever shows the best leadership, the strongest vision, gets the company. The other gets a generous settlement, $5 billion, but no control." Victoria's eyes lit up immediately. She'd always dreamed of running the empire. But Olivia's face went pale. She didn't want to compete with her sister. She loved the charity work she'd been doing, building schools in poor countries, funding medical research. The company meant everything to Victoria. It meant very little to her. That night, Olivia went to Victoria's room. "Take it," she said softly. "I don't want to fight you for this. You're the natural leader. You've always been better at business." Victoria hugged her tight. "Are you sure? That's incredibly generous." Olivia smiled. "We're sisters. Your success is my success. I'll focus on the foundation. You run the company. We both win." For 2 months, it worked beautifully. Victoria threw herself into learning every aspect of Sterling Industries. She worked 18-hour days, impressed the board members, closed deals their father had been struggling with for years. Olivia traveled to Uganda to open a new hospital, then to Guatemala to check on a school they'd funded. She posted pictures of smiling children, of clean water wells, of communities transformed by Sterling money. Their father beamed with pride at both of them. Then came the audit. The company's chief financial officer, Thomas Bradley, requested an urgent meeting with Victoria. His face was gray when she entered the conference room. "We have a problem," he said, sliding a tablet across the table. "Someone's been moving money out of the company accounts. Small amounts at first, but it's accelerated. We're missing almost $50 million. Victoria's blood turned to ice. "Who has access to those accounts?" Thomas looked uncomfortable. "You, your father, and your sister." The room started spinning. "No, not possible. Olivia would never." "There must be a mistake," Victoria said firmly. "Run the audit again. Check for hackers, for system errors." But 3 days later, the evidence was undeniable. The money had been transferred to offshore accounts, then moved again, creating a complex web. But they'd traced it. The initial transfers had all been authorized using Olivia's executive passwords, at times when she was logged into the system. The final destination? A private investment fund in the Cayman Islands registered under a shell company. When they dug deeper, they found Olivia's signature on the incorporation documents. Victoria felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. Her twin sister, her other half, had been stealing from their family. But why? Olivia already had billions. What could she possibly need the money for? Victoria's shock turned to something darker. All those trips overseas? Had they been real or just cover while she drained the company? All that talk about not wanting to compete. Had it been a lie to make Victoria lower her guard? Thomas urged her to call the police immediately. But Victoria couldn't do it. Not yet. She needed to hear it from Olivia's mouth. She needed to understand why. So she called her sister and asked her to meet at the Bellagio Casino in Las Vegas, neutral ground where they'd celebrated their 21st birthday. "I found something I need to show you," Victoria said carefully. "It's about the company. Can you fly out tonight?" Olivia arrived 12 hours later, still wearing her humanitarian work clothes, simple jeans and a Sterling Foundation t-shirt. She looked tired but happy, hugging Victoria at the entrance. "Is everything okay? You sounded strange on the phone." Victoria led her to a private room she'd reserved on the high roller floor. The briefcase sat on the table between two chairs. $50 million in bearer bonds she'd liquidated from her personal accounts. If Olivia was innocent, Victoria would give it all to her foundation as an apology for doubting her. If she was guilty— "I need to ask you something," Victoria began, her voice shaking. "And I need you to tell me the truth." She opened her laptop and showed Olivia the audit reports, the transaction records, the offshore accounts. With each page, Olivia's face grew paler. That's not possible," Olivia whispered. "I would never—" "Your passwords, your signatures, your access times," Victoria interrupted, tears streaming down her face now. $50 million, Olivia. Stolen from our family, from Dad, from me, from everything Grandpa built. Why? Olivia stood up so fast her chair fell backward. "You think I stole from us?" "Victoria, I swear on Mom's grave I didn't take that money. Someone's framing me." "Who? Who would do that? Who else would have—" But Victoria never finished her sentence because that's when the door burst open. Two men in suits entered, followed by their father in a wheelchair. Wennedy started using a wheelchair, and behind him, impossibly, was another Olivia. Same face, same hair, same everything. The Olivia next to Victoria screamed. The Olivia by the door smiled coldly. "Hello, sister," the new Olivia said. Surprise, Victoria's world tilted sideways. Two Olivias. Two identical faces staring at each other with matching expressions of shock and fury. Her father's face was ghost white, his knuckles clenched on the wheelchair armrests. "What is this?" Victoria choked out, looking between her sisters. The Olivia who'd arrived at the casino, the one she'd been talking to for the past hour, started backing toward the window, her eyes wild with panic. The Olivia who'd entered with their father stepped forward calmly, pulling out her phone. "This is Justice," she said quietly. "Play the video, Dad." Their father's hands shook as he pressed play on his tablet. Security footage filled the screen. It showed the first Olivia, the one now trapped in the corner, entering Sterling Industries headquarters at midnight 3 weeks ago. She used a key card to access the executive floor, sat at a computer, and began transferring funds. The timestamp matched perfectly with the audit report. But there was something else on the video, something that made Victoria's stomach drop. The woman on screen kept glancing at a small mirror she'd propped on the desk, practicing facial expressions, smiling and frowning like she was rehearsing, like she was learning to be someone else. "Who are you?" Victoria whispered to the cornered woman. The fake Olivia's face crumpled. For a moment she looked young and terrified and lost. Then her expression hardened into something cruel. "My name is Rebecca Sterling. I'm your half-sister." The room went completely silent. Their father made a choking sound. "That's impossible," he gasped. "I never—" Rebecca laughed bitterly. "Not your daughter?" "Old man. His." She pointed at a photograph on the wall, their grandfather in his prime, standing in front of the first Sterling Industries building. "Your perfect father had an affair with my grandmother 30 years ago. She was his secretary." When she got pregnant, he paid her off and made her sign papers promising she'd never tell anyone. My mother grew up in poverty while you three lived in mansions. She died last year without ever getting what she deserved, so I decided to take it myself. Victoria felt like the floor was dissolving beneath her feet. A half-aunt who looked exactly like Olivia. How was that even possible? The real Olivia stepped forward, her voice steady despite her tears. Plastic surgery, she said, understanding dawning in her eyes. You had surgery to look like me. That's why you kept the mirror out. You were still getting used to the new face. Rebecca nodded slowly. Cost me $2 million and 18 months of recovery. But I studied you for 3 years before that, Olivia. Watched every interview, every charity event, every social media post. I learned how you walk, how you talk, how you tilt your head when you're thinking. I became you. And it was so easy to slip into your life because you're never actually here. Always off saving strangers while ignoring your own family. The cruelty in her voice made Victoria flinch, but Olivia just looked sad. Those strangers are children who needed clean water and medicine. People who were dying. How could I ignore that? Rebecca's face twisted with rage. How could you ignore that my mother died in a county hospital because she couldn't afford treatment? Your foundation builds hospitals in Africa while Americans like her suffer and die. You want to be a saint so badly, but you couldn't save the woman whose life your grandfather destroyed. Their father wheeled himself forward. I didn't know, he said hoarsely. My father never told me about your grandmother. If I'd known you existed, if I'd known your mother needed help. He stopped, realizing how hollow it sounded. Rebecca's laugh was sharp and broken. You didn't know because you didn't want to know. Your father kept files, kept records of the payments. They were in his personal safe this whole time. But you never looked. Too busy building your empire on money that should have been shared. Victoria's mind was racing. The $50 million. You were going to disappear with it, weren't you? Frame Olivia, destroy her reputation, and vanish. Rebecca shrugged. That was the plan. Thought I'd get more, honestly. $50 million is pocket change to you people. But then Thomas caught the discrepancies faster than I expected. I needed a scapegoat, and perfect Olivia was right there. Everyone would believe she'd been stealing to fund her charity obsession. No one would question it. The security guards at the door shifted, waiting for orders. But their father held up a hand. Wait, he said. His eyes were wet. Rebecca, your family. What happened to your grandmother, to your mother? It was wrong, unconscionable. But this isn't the answer. Let me make it right. I'll give you what you're owed, what your family should have received. We'll acknowledge you publicly as part of the Sterling family. You don't have to steal. You don't have to pretend to be someone else. For just a second, something flickered in Rebecca's eyes. Hope, maybe. Longing for the acceptance she'd never had. But then it died, replaced by cold determination. I don't want your charity, she spat. I want you to feel what I felt. I want you to lose everything like my mother did. Like I did. She pulled something from her pocket. A USB drive. I copied every dirty secret Sterling Industries has hidden for the past 40 years. Tax evasion, environmental violations, bribery, all of it. It's set to automatically upload to every major news outlet in, she checked her watch, 10 minutes unless I enter a code to stop it. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to transfer $500 million to my account right now, and you're going to let me walk out of here. Or your company, your reputation, your entire legacy burns to the ground. Victoria looked at the briefcase on the table, then at her father's devastated face, then at Olivia's determined one. $500 million. It would cripple the company's cash reserves, cancel expansion plans, mean layoffs for thousands of employees who'd done nothing wrong. But if those secrets got out, Sterling Industries would be destroyed completely. Prison for their father. Lawsuits that would drain every asset. The end of everything their grandfather built. Don't give it to her, Olivia said firmly. Everyone turned to stare at her. Olivia, their father started, but she cut him off. No, Dad. She's right about one thing. Our family has been hiding from the truth for too long. Maybe it's time people knew what Grandpa really was. Maybe it's time we faced consequences instead of paying them off. Rebecca's eyes narrowed. You're bluffing. You wouldn't destroy your own family. Olivia met her gaze steadily. Try me. I've spent 5 years trying to make up for the harm our wealth has caused. Building schools and hospitals because I knew, deep down, that our money was dirty somehow, that we didn't earn it fairly. If exposing the truth is what brings real justice, then so be it. We'll rebuild. We'll do it right this time, but we won't be blackmailed by family. The room held its breath. Rebecca's finger hovered over her phone. Victoria realized with crystal clarity that her sister meant every word. Olivia would let their entire world collapse if it meant doing the right thing. And standing there, Victoria felt something shift inside her. Her whole life she'd been afraid of losing money, status, power. But watching Olivia stand there, brave and certain and good, she understood that those things meant nothing compared to integrity. She's not bluffing, Victoria said, stepping beside her sister. And neither am I. Release your files, Rebecca. We'll face whatever comes, but we won't reward you for trying to destroy us. Their father looked between his daughters, and despite everything, despite the terror of what was coming, he smiled with tears running down his face. Your mother would be so proud, he whispered. Rebecca stared at them like they'd lost their minds. Her hand trembled on the phone. 5 seconds passed. 10. Then she screamed in frustration and hurled the phone against the wall, shattering it. You're all insane. You're throwing away billions because of pride. Not pride, Olivia said softly. Principle. That's when the elevator dinged and 6 FBI agents stepped out, guns drawn. Thomas Bradley followed behind them, looking grim. Sorry for the delay, he said. We traced her real identity 3 hours ago. Had to get the warrants in order. Rebecca's face went blank with shock as an agent pulled her hands behind her back and snapped on handcuffs. Rebecca Sterling, you're under arrest for wire fraud, identity theft, corporate espionage, and extortion. As they led her away, she looked back at Olivia with something that might have been regret or might have been hatred. You could have had everything, Rebecca said. You were born into it. Why did you spend your life giving it away? Olivia's answer was simple and devastating. Because having everything means nothing if you don't share it with people who have nothing. The elevator doors closed. The room exhaled. Victoria's legs gave out and she sat down hard on the floor, her heart hammering. They'd done it. They'd stood up to blackmail and won. But the victory felt hollow somehow. Because Rebecca was right about some things. Their grandfather had abandoned her grandmother. Their family had built wealth while others suffered. The files on that USB drive, were they even lies? Her father wheeled over and took both his daughter's hands. Girls, I need to tell you something. Those files Rebecca mentioned, some of them are real. Your grandfather made choices I'm not proud of. I made choices I'm not proud of. We prioritized profit over people too many times. I thought I was protecting our legacy, but maybe I was just protecting our secrets. He looked old suddenly, ancient and tired. When I announced my retirement, I told you I wanted to see which of you would be the best leader. But I realize now I was asking the wrong question. I should have asked which of you would be the best person. And Olivia, sweetheart, you already answered that. You've been answering it for years. Olivia shook her head. Dad, I don't want the company. I meant what I said before. He squeezed her hand. I know, but I'm changing the plan. You're both going to run it together, co-CEOs. Victoria has the business sense. You have the moral compass. Together, you might actually fix the damage we've done. Victoria looked at her twin. The idea terrified her, but it also felt right. What do you say, sister? Want to save the world from the inside? Olivia smiled, but before she could answer, Thomas burst back into the room, his phone pressed to his ear and his face white as paper. Turn on the news, he gasped. Right now. Victoria grabbed the remote and switched on the massive television on the wall. Every channel showed the same thing. Breaking news banners, frantic reporters, footage of Sterling Industries headquarters surrounded by police cars and news vans. The headline made Victoria's blood freeze solid. Sterling Industries, heir arrested for billion-dollar Ponzi scheme. Massive fraud uncovered. Thousands of investors affected. Federal investigation underway. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the photograph they kept showing. The suspect they'd arrested. It was Olivia's face. The real Olivia. Wearing the same clothes she had on right now, being led away in handcuffs from what looked like the Sterling Industries building. The timestamp said 20 minutes ago. Impossible. Olivia was right here. Unless Rebecca hadn't been working alone after all. Olivia stared at her own face on the television screen, watching herself being arrested for crimes she didn't commit. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Victoria grabbed her sister's shoulders. That's not you. You're right here. This is another trick, another... But Thomas was already pulling up security feeds on his tablet, his fingers flying across the screen. The arrest happened at headquarters 15 minutes ago. But look at this. He showed them footage from the building's lobby. A woman who looked exactly like Olivia walked in through the front doors at 9 this morning, used Olivia's key card, took Olivia's private elevator to the executive floor, and spent 6 hours in Olivia's office. When FBI agents arrived to arrest Rebecca, they found this Olivia instead, sitting calmly at the desk surrounded by incriminating documents about fraudulent investments and fake charity funds. There's a third one, Victoria whispered, the horror settling into her bones like ice water. Rebecca had a partner, someone else who had surgery to look like Olivia. Their father's face had gone gray. He clutched his chest and Thomas immediately called for the paramedic who'd been standing by outside. But their father waved him off weakly. I'm fine, just shocked. Who would do this? Who else wants to destroy us? The answer came faster than any of them expected. The television switched to a press conference. A woman stood at a podium, wearing an expensive suit, her blonde hair pulled back severely. She looked nothing like the Sterlings, but something about her eyes made Victoria's skin crawl with recognition. My name is Patricia Morrison, the woman said to the cameras. I'm the attorney representing the victims of the Sterling family's decades-long fraud scheme. Today, we've taken the first step toward justice by arresting Olivia Sterling. But this is just the beginning. We have evidence that the entire Sterling family has been running an elaborate con, using their so-called charity foundation to launder money and defraud investors worldwide. Victoria's hands started shaking. Patricia Morrison. The name triggered something in her memory. She pulled out her phone and searched frantically. There, a photograph from 20 years ago. Patricia Morrison, then Patricia Chen, standing next to her husband David Chen at a business conference. David Chen, who'd been their grandfather's business partner in the early days of Sterling Industries. David Chen, who'd been pushed out of the company after a dispute and died by suicide 5 years later. She's Chen's widow, Victoria breathed. Oh God, this isn't just about Rebecca's mother. This goes back even further. Thomas pulled up more information on his tablet. Patricia Morrison spent the last 15 years building a law career specializing in corporate fraud cases. She's won billions in settlements. And according to this, she's been investigating Sterling Industries for the past 3 years. The same timeline Rebecca mentioned. Olivia finally found her voice. She recruited Rebecca, probably found her while researching Grandpa's past, discovered the affair, saw an opportunity. They've been planning this together. Their father nodded weakly. David Chen believed I stole the patents that made Sterling Industries successful. He thought my father cheated him out of his share of the company. He spent years trying to sue us, but we had better lawyers. When he lost everything, when he took his own life, Patricia blamed us. I thought she'd moved on, but she was just waiting. Planning. The press conference continued. Patricia's voice was calm and cold as she listed accusations. Fake charities, shell companies, money laundering through international foundations. Every horrible thing Rebecca had threatened to expose, Patricia was now claiming as truth, backed by doctored documents and paid witnesses. The news reporters ate it up. Sterling Industries' stock was already plummeting. Victoria watched the ticker at the bottom of the screen drop 5%, then 10, then 15. Billions of dollars in value evaporating by the minute. We need to release a statement, Thomas said urgently. Get ahead of this before... But he was interrupted by Victoria's phone ringing, then Olivia's, then their father's. Then every phone in the room started going off simultaneously. Investors, board members, partners, all calling at once. The company was in free fall. Victoria answered her phone. It was the head of their largest manufacturing division. Victoria, I'm getting calls from suppliers canceling contracts. Our credit lines are being frozen. Banks are demanding immediate repayment of loans. If we don't stop this in the next few hours, we'll have to file for bankruptcy protection. She hung up and looked at her family. The empire their grandfather had built over 50 years was collapsing in real time. Everything they owned, everything they were, vanishing like smoke. And somewhere out there, two women who looked exactly like Olivia were destroying their lives from the inside. We fight back, Victoria said, her voice hard. We prove the real Olivia is here with us. We show the world this is a setup. But Olivia shook her head slowly. How? We have no proof I've been here all day. The security footage shows me at headquarters. My keycard was used. My passwords accessed the system. Even if we tell them about Rebecca, even if we prove one of them is an imposter, how do we prove I'm the real one and not part of the scam? The terrible logic of it sank in. Patricia and Rebecca had created the perfect trap. Multiple Olivias. All looking identical, all with access to Sterling systems. No way to prove which was real and which was fake. No way to prove innocence when all the evidence pointed to guilt. And even if they could prove Olivia was innocent, the company would still be destroyed by the scandal. Their father looked at his daughters with tears streaming down his face. I'm so sorry. This is my fault. My father's fault. We should have been honest years ago. We should have made things right with David Chen's family, with Rebecca's mother. We thought we could bury the past, but it just grew into this monster. Olivia knelt beside his wheelchair and took his hands. Dad, what happened before isn't your fault. You didn't know. But what happens next is our choice. We can run and hide and try to salvage what we can. Or we can stand and fight and tell the truth. All of it, even the ugly parts. Victoria felt that now familiar sensation of her sister being braver than she could ever hope to be. But this time, instead of feeling inadequate, she felt inspired. Olivia's right. We go public. We admit Grandpa's mistakes. We acknowledge the harm our family caused. But we also expose Patricia's scheme. We find the third Olivia. We prove this is revenge, not justice. Thomas looked doubtful. That's incredibly risky. Admitting to past crimes could open you up to lawsuits, criminal charges. Their father interrupted. Do it. Call a press conference for tomorrow morning. We'll tell everything. Let the chips fall where they may. The decision made, they spent the next 6 hours preparing. Lawyers were called. Documents were gathered. Thomas worked with the FBI to track Rebecca's communications, trying to find evidence of Patricia's involvement. And Victoria sat with Olivia, holding her hand, trying to figure out where the third imposter might be. Think, Victoria said. If you were Patricia, where would you send the fake Olivia after the arrest? She can't stay at headquarters. Too many cameras, too much security. Olivia closed her eyes, thinking. She'd need somewhere public enough that people would see her, but controlled enough that she could manage what they saw. Somewhere that would make the news. Her eyes snapped open. The Foundation Gala. It's tonight. 500 donors, all the major news networks covering it. If fake Olivia shows up there, free on bail, acting like nothing happened, it proves she's confident. It makes real me look guilty by comparison. Victoria checked her watch. The gala started in 2 hours. Then we go there. We confront her in front of everyone. Force her to prove she's you. It was dangerous. It was possibly insane. But it was also the only move they had left. They changed into evening gowns, had their hair and makeup done by professionals who whispered nervously about the news reports. Victoria wore midnight blue. Olivia wore silver. They looked like mirror images, wealth and elegance personified, even as their world burned down around them. The drive to the downtown hotel where the gala was being held took 30 minutes through traffic. News vans lined the streets outside. Protesters held signs reading, "Sterling Greed" and "Jail the Rich." Security guards formed a barrier as Victoria and Olivia stepped out of the car. Cameras flashed. Reporters screamed questions. Olivia, did you steal from your own charity? Victoria, are you an accomplice? Is it true you've been arrested? They walked through the chaos with their heads high, not answering, not flinching. Inside the hotel ballroom, the gala was underway. 500 people in tuxedos and gowns, drinking champagne, pretending everything was normal even though they all knew it wasn't. Conversations died as Victoria and Olivia entered. Every eye turned toward them. And there, across the room, standing next to Patricia Morrison and smiling like she owned the world, was the third Olivia. She wore the same silver dress as real Olivia, the same hairstyle, the same jewelry. Looking at them was like looking at a photograph and its reflection. For a long moment, nobody moved. The entire ballroom held its breath. Then fake Olivia started walking toward them, Patricia following like a shark scenting blood. They met in the center of the room, surrounded by hundreds of witnesses. "Hello, Victoria," fake Olivia said, her voice a perfect copy. "I'm glad you could make it to my event." Real Olivia stepped forward. "This is my foundation, my gala. My life you're stealing." Fake Olivia's smile didn't waver. "Can you prove that?" "Because I have identification, passwords, biometric scans that say, I'm Olivia Sterling. What do you have?" The challenge hung in the air. Victoria's mind raced. How did you prove someone was themselves? What made a person real versus a copy? Then she remembered something from their childhood, something only the real Olivia would know. "When we were 9, Victoria said loudly, making sure everyone could hear, "we had a dog named Mr. Whiskers. Tell them what happened to Mr. Whiskers." Fake Olivia's smile faltered just slightly. "He died of old age." Real Olivia shook her head. "No. He ate Mom's chocolate birthday cake off the counter and had to go to the emergency vet. We stayed up all night in the animal hospital, terrified he would die. You held my hand and told me if he didn't make it, we'd adopt every dog at the shelter in his honor. And when he pulled through, we did it anyway. We adopted 12 dogs that month." Dad was furious. But Mom thought it was hilarious. Tears were streaming down real Olivia's face now. "Mr. Whiskers lived to be 17. He died the same week Mom did. And we buried him in her garden with a stone that said, 'The best friend 2 girls ever had.' That's who I am. Those are my memories, my life. You can have my face, but you'll never have that." The room was completely silent. Even Patricia looked uncertain. Because there was something in real Olivia's voice, some quality of genuine emotion and true memory that couldn't be faked. Fake Olivia opened her mouth, then closed it. She looked at Patricia desperately. But before anyone could speak, the ballroom doors burst open and FBI agents poured in, at least 20 of them, surrounding the room. The lead agent walked straight to fake Olivia. "Jennifer Walsh, you're under arrest for fraud and identity theft. We traced the payment Patricia Morrison made to your plastic surgeon." Fake Olivia's face crumpled. Her carefully maintained mask fell away, revealing the desperation underneath. "You promised," she screamed at Patricia. "You said we'd destroy them. You said I'd be rich." Patricia's face had gone pale. She started backing toward the exit, but agents blocked her path. "Patricia Morrison, you're also under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, extortion, and a dozen other charges." As they led both women away in handcuffs, the ballroom erupted in chaos. Guests pulled out phones, calling lawyers and brokers. News cameras pushed forward. And Victoria just held her sister, both of them shaking with relief and exhaustion and the surreal horror of what they'd just survived. But it wasn't over yet. Thomas pushed through the crowd, his face urgent. "We have a problem. A big one. While we were here, someone emptied the company's main operating accounts. Every liquid asset we have, $90 billion gone." Victoria's relief turned to ice. "What? How? We had protections, security." Thomas showed her his tablet. The transfers had been authorized an hour ago using their father's executive codes, but their father had been with them the whole time. Which meant someone else had his access, someone they hadn't accounted for. Rebecca was in jail. Jennifer Walsh was now arrested. Patricia was in handcuffs. But somewhere out there was one more player in this game, someone who'd been moving in the shadows while they fought the visible enemies. "Who?" Olivia whispered. Thomas pulled up a security photo from headquarters, time-stamped 30 minutes ago. A man in a suit walking out of the executive offices carrying a briefcase. The image was blurry, but Victoria's blood turned to ice as she recognized him. It was their uncle, Richard Sterling, their father's younger brother who'd been living quietly in Europe for 20 years. The brother nobody ever talked about. The one their grandfather had written out of the will for reasons their father never explained. And suddenly, Victoria understood. This wasn't just about Rebecca's mother or Patricia's revenge. This was about family. This was about every person the Sterlings had ever wronged coming back for what they believed they were owed. Richard had been the mastermind all along, using Rebecca and Patricia as distractions while he positioned himself to take everything. The lights in the ballroom suddenly went out, plunging 500 people into darkness. Emergency lights flickered on, casting everything in an eerie red glow. And on every television screen in the room, on every phone, the same message appeared in white text on black. The Sterling Empire ends tonight. What was stolen will be returned. What was hidden will be revealed. Justice is coming. R.S. Victoria grabbed Olivia's hand in the darkness, her heart hammering. They'd stopped Rebecca. They'd exposed Patricia. They'd proven Olivia's innocence. But they'd been fighting the wrong war. The real battle was just beginning, and they'd already lost $90 billion. The emergency lights painted everything blood red as Victoria's phone buzzed with an incoming call from an unknown number. Her hand trembled as she answered, putting it on speaker so Olivia could hear. "Hello, nieces." Uncle Richard's voice was smooth, cultured, exactly as Victoria remembered from childhood before he disappeared. "I imagine you're quite confused right now." Victoria's voice came out steadier than she felt. "You planned all of this. Rebecca, Patricia, the imposters. You orchestrated everything." Richard laughed softly. "Not everything. Rebecca genuinely hated your family. Patricia truly wanted revenge for her husband. I simply gave them the tools and opportunity they needed. Sometimes the best way to destroy something is to let all its enemies attack at once. While you were busy fighting them, I walked right into the vault." Olivia leaned closer to the phone. "Why? What did our family do to you that was worth all this?" The line went quiet for a long moment. When Richard spoke again, his voice had changed, gone cold and bitter. "Your grandfather didn't just cheat David Chen or abandon Rebecca's grandmother. He murdered my wife." The ballroom seemed to tilt. Victoria grabbed the edge of a table to steady herself. "What are you talking about? Aunt Caroline died in a car accident 20 years ago." Richard's breath came harsh through the phone. "That's what the police report said, but I know the truth. Caroline discovered your grandfather was running illegal operations, using Sterling Industries to move money for dangerous people. She was going to expose him, so he had her car tampered with, made it look like brake failure. I found the mechanic he paid off, got a confession, had proof. But when I went to your father with the evidence, he chose his father over justice. He paid off the mechanic to recant, buried the investigation, and told me to leave the country or he'd make sure I went to prison for making false accusations against a dying old man." Victoria looked at her father, who'd been wheeled into the ballroom by his nurse. His face was ashen, tears running down his cheeks. He nodded slowly. "It's true," he whispered. "Dad confessed everything to me on his deathbed. I made the wrong choice. I protected him because I was afraid of losing everything. I destroyed my relationship with my brother to save a monster. Richard, I'm so sorry." The phone crackled with rage. "Your sorry means nothing. You stole 20 years of my life. I couldn't even attend my own wife's funeral because you threatened me. So yes, I spent 2 decades planning this. I found everyone your family ever hurt. I gave them resources and revenge. And while they attacked from the front, I learned every secret, every password, every vulnerability Sterling Industries had. Now I have the money, I have the evidence, and I have the power to make you feel exactly what I felt." The screens around the ballroom flickered and changed. Documents appeared, thousands of pages scrolling past. Contracts showing Sterling Industries had knowingly sold faulty equipment to hospitals. Environmental reports they'd buried, showing their factories poisoned entire towns. Emails proving they'd bribed politicians and silenced whistleblowers. Every crime, every secret, every terrible choice 3 generations of Sterlings had made. "In 60 seconds, Richard said, this all goes public. Every news organization, every government agency, every person your family ever hurt will have access. Sterling Industries will be dissolved. Your assets will be frozen, and you'll spend the rest of your lives in courts and possibly prisons. The empire ends exactly as it should, with the truth. Victoria's mind raced through options. They could try to stop the upload, but Richard had proven he was always 3 steps ahead. They could run, but where would they go? They could fight, but how did you fight the truth? She looked at Olivia, at her father, at the hundreds of people in the ballroom who'd trusted the Sterling name, at Thomas, who'd worked for them for 15 years, at all the lives that would be destroyed when this came out, innocent people who'd done nothing wrong except work for a corrupt company. "Don't do this," Victoria said into the phone. "Please. Not for us. For the 10,000 people who work for Sterling Industries, for their families. They'll lose everything. They don't deserve this." Richard's voice was unmoved. "My wife didn't deserve to die. Those hospital patients who got faulty equipment didn't deserve that. The children who drank poisoned water didn't deserve that. Why should your employees be protected from the consequences of your family's actions?" 30 seconds left on the countdown. Olivia stepped forward and took the phone from Victoria's hand. When she spoke, her voice was clear and strong. "You're right. They don't deserve protection. None of us do. Release the files, Uncle Richard. Expose every crime. Send us to prison if that's what justice requires. But please, the $90 billion you took, don't keep it. Those are operating funds. Without them, the company collapses immediately, and 10,000 people lose their jobs tomorrow. Give the money to the victims instead. Every person in those files, every community we poisoned, every family we hurt. Distribute it as restitution. Let our downfall at least help the people we harmed." The countdown stopped at 15 seconds. Silence stretched across the phone line. Victoria held her breath. She'd seen Olivia be brave before, but this was different. This was her sister choosing justice over survival, choosing to help others even as their world ended. It was the most Olivia thing she'd ever witnessed. "You'd give up $90 billion to help strangers?" Richard finally asked, his voice uncertain for the first time. Olivia nodded even though he couldn't see her. "Yes, because that's what it means to actually make things right. Not revenge, restoration. You've suffered terribly, Uncle Richard. Our family took everything from you. But if you become like Grandpa, if you destroy innocent people just to hurt us, then he wins. He turns you into the same kind of monster he was." More silence. Victoria could hear her own heartbeat loud in her ears. The ballroom was so quiet she could hear people breathing. Everything balanced on this moment, on whether 2 decades of pain and rage could be overcome by an offer of genuine restitution. "The files still go public," Richard said finally. "Your family's crimes need to be known. But I'll release the $90 billion to an independent foundation. They'll distribute it to victims over the next 10 years. Not because I forgive you, because my wife would have wanted me to help people, not destroy them for revenge." The screens went black, then filled with documents again as Richard made good on his promise. Every secret, every crime, flooding out into the world. Victoria watched their family's reputation die in real time. Sterling Industries stock hit zero. Breaking news alerts exploded across every phone. The FBI agents who'd arrested Patricia and Jennifer turned toward the Sterling family with grim expressions. But before they could speak, something unexpected happened. One of the gala guests stood up, an elderly woman in an elegant green dress. Victoria recognized her as Helen Zhang, whose late husband had been one of their grandfather's early investors. "I knew your grandfather," Helen said loudly, silencing the room. "He was a brilliant businessman and a terrible human being. He cheated my husband out of millions. But I also know you 2 girls," she pointed at Victoria and Olivia. "I've watched you for years. Victoria, you worked night and day to make Sterling Industries actually produce good products instead of cheap garbage. You fired executives who cut corners. You implemented safety standards. Olivia, you've used your wealth to save lives across the world. You didn't just write checks, you showed up. You built schools with your own hands." Other people started standing. A man whose sister had died from faulty Sterling medical equipment. A woman whose town's water had been poisoned. A former employee who'd been laid off during restructuring. One by one, they spoke. "Your family hurt me. Your grandfather destroyed my community. I lost everything because of Sterling Industries. And then, but you're not them. You tried to fix it. You're different. It wasn't forgiveness exactly. It was something more complex. Acknowledgement that children weren't responsible for their parents' sins, even if they inherited the consequences. Recognition that Victoria and Olivia had spent years trying to be better than the family that came before them. The FBI lead agent stepped forward. Victoria and Olivia Sterling, you're not under arrest at this time. However, you'll need to cooperate fully with multiple investigations. Your father will likely face charges. The company will be liquidated to pay restitution. You personally may face civil suits. This isn't over. Victoria nodded. She hadn't expected it to be over. Justice was messy and complicated and would take years to sort out. But for the first time in days, she felt like they might survive it. Not intact, not wealthy, but alive and honest and free. The next 6 months were brutal. Their father was indicted on conspiracy charges for covering up their grandfather's crimes. He pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 5 years in a minimum security prison. Sterling Industries declared bankruptcy, its assets sold off piece by piece. The mansion was seized. The cars, the art, the yacht, everything went to pay victims and legal fees. Victoria and Olivia moved into a small apartment in a neighborhood they'd never visited when they were rich. They each kept $1 million from their personal accounts, everything else going to restitution. It was strange, being suddenly poor after a lifetime of wealth. They had to learn how to grocery shop, how to take the bus, how to budget. The first time Victoria had to tell a cashier she couldn't afford something, she cried in the parking lot. But they learned. And slowly, surprisingly, they began to appreciate things they'd never noticed before, the taste of coffee they'd made themselves instead of having prepared by a chef, the satisfaction of cleaning their own apartment, the genuine friendships they formed with neighbors who didn't care about their last name. Olivia got a job at a local community center, teaching kids art and reading. She made $12 an hour and came home exhausted and happy every night. Victoria used her business skills to help small companies with their accounting, charging modest fees and actually enjoying the work without corporate pressure. They visited their father every week in prison. He'd aged rapidly, his hair completely white now, but his eyes were clearer than they'd been in years. "I should have done this decades ago," he said one visit. "Faced consequences, told the truth. I thought I was protecting you girls, but I was really just protecting myself." Uncle Richard never contacted them again, but they saw news stories about a mysterious foundation distributing billions to victims of corporate crimes. They recognized his handiwork. Rebecca and Patricia were both serving time in federal prison. Jennifer Walsh had turned state's evidence and gotten a reduced sentence. The imposters who'd tried to destroy them were just broken people seeking revenge for real wounds. It didn't make what they'd done right, but it made it understandable. 1 year after the gala, Victoria and Olivia sat on their apartment's small balcony, drinking cheap wine and watching the sunset. They'd lost everything. Their wealth, their status, their family name. But sitting there together, Victoria realized she was happier than she'd ever been in the mansion. "Do you regret it?" she asked Olivia. "Telling Richard to give away the money? We could have kept some. Could have been comfortable." Olivia smiled. "No, do you?" Victoria thought about it honestly. A year ago, she would have fought tooth and nail to keep every penny. But now? Not even a little bit. We're doing more good now than we ever did as billionaires. Smaller scale, but it actually matters. Her phone rang, interrupting the moment. An unknown number. Victoria almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Mrs. Sterling? This is Marcus Webb from Webb Industries. I've been following your story. I'm looking for someone to help restructure my company ethically. Make sure we're not making the same mistakes your family did. I know you've been doing small business consulting. Would you be interested in something bigger?" Victoria looked at Olivia, who'd been listening. Her sister nodded encouragingly. "Mr. Webb, I'd need full transparency, complete access to all records. And if I find anything illegal, I report it immediately, no matter the consequences to your company." Webb laughed. "That's exactly why I'm calling you. My board thinks I'm crazy for hiring a Sterling, but I told them that's the point. You learned these lessons the hardest way possible. So, are you interested? Victoria felt something stir in her chest. Not ambition exactly, more like purpose. I am, but I have a condition. My sister Olivia comes too. She handles all community impact and charitable giving. We're a package deal. Webb agreed immediately. The salary was modest by their old standards, but generous for their new life. Enough to move to a nicer apartment, maybe save for the future. As Victoria hung up, Olivia hugged her tight. We're actually doing it. Building something new, something clean. The sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and reds. In the street below, a group of kids played basketball, their laughter floating up. An old woman watered flowers on her balcony. A young couple walked hand in hand. Normal life. Beautiful life. The kind they'd never really seen from their mansion's walls. Victoria thought about the title everyone had given their story when the scandal broke. Two billionaires become richest person. The media had meant it ironically, showing how their wealth was built on lies. But sitting there with her sister, Victoria realized they'd actually fulfilled that title in a way nobody expected. They'd lost billions in money but gained something more valuable. Integrity, purpose, real relationships, freedom from the weight of inherited guilt. They were richer now than they'd ever been, just not in the way anyone measured. You know what's funny? Olivia said, reading Victoria's mind the way twins sometimes could. Everyone thinks our story is about losing everything. But I think it's about finding what actually matters. Victoria raised her cheap wine in a toast. To being the richest people we know, Olivia clinked her glass. To being the best versions of ourselves. Below them, the city continued its evening rhythm. Somewhere, their uncle was distributing money to victims. Their father was serving his time with dignity. The people they'd hurt were slowly healing. Justice was being served, not perfectly but persistently. And two women who'd been born into unearned wealth were learning to build earned meaning. The Sterling Empire had fallen. But Victoria and Olivia Sterling were just beginning to rise, not as billionaire heiresses, but as humans who'd chosen conscience over comfort, truth over treasure. They'd lost everything except what mattered. And in the end, that made them the richest people in the world. The sunset faded to twilight. The first stars appeared. And two sisters sat together, poor and happy and free, finally understanding that the greatest fortune wasn't inherited. It was earned through choosing right over easy, compassion over cruelty, and each other over everything else. Their grandfather had built an empire on lies. Their father had maintained it through silence. But Victoria and Olivia would build something better on truth. Not an empire, just a good life. And that was worth more than all the billions they'd lost.